Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jannavalabha Jaya Girivardhari Jaya Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jannavalabha Jaya Girivardhari Jaya Girivardhari Jaya Yasodanandana Jaya Brajjandaranjana Jaya Brajjandaranjana Jaya Yasodanandana Jaya Brajjandaranjana Jaya Brajjandaranjana Jaya Jamuna Tirvandachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jamuna Tirvandachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jannavalabha Jaya Girivardhari Jaya Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Chandra Vallabha Jaya Giridharadhari Jaya Giridharadhari Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Brajajandaranjana Jaya Brajajandaranjana Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Brajajandaranjana Jaya Brajajandaranjana Jaya Jamuna Chirvandachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jamuna Chirvandachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Yamuna Tirvandachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Chandra Vallabha Jaya Giridharadhari Jaya Giridharadhari Jaya Gopi Chandra Vallabha Jaya Giridharadhari Jaya Giridharadhari Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Brajajandaranjana Jaya Brajajandaranjana Randaranjana Jaya Jamundachirvannachari Jaya Kunja Vihari Jaya Jamundachirvannachari Jaya Kunja Vihari Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitya Haribo, 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 Nitya Gora Haribo. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Paramahamsa Prabhupada Śrīmad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 12. Rahugana converses with Jadbharat. Text number 9. Evam niruktam akshiti sabdhavritam asan nidanat paramannavoye avidyaya manasa kalpitaste yesham samuhina krito visheshaha evam niruktam kshiti sabdhavritam asannidanat paramannavoye avidyaya manasa kalpitaste yesham samuhina krito visheshaha evam niruktam kshiti sabdhavritam asannidanat paramannavoye avidyaya manasa kalpitaste yesham samuhina krito visheshaha Evam, thus, niruktam, falsely described, chitti shabda, of the word earth, britam, the existence, asat, not real, nidanat, from the dissolution, parama anavaha, atomic particles, yea, all of which, avidyaya, because of less intelligence, manasa, in the mind, kalpita, imagined, te, they, yesham, of which, samuhina, by the aggregate, kritaha, made, visesha, the particulars. Translation, one may say that varieties arise from the planet Earth itself. However, although the universe may temporarily appear to be the truth, it ultimately has no real existence. The Earth was originally created by a combination of atomic particles, but these particles are impermanent. Actually, the atom is not the cause of the universe, although some philosophers think so. It is not a fact that the varieties found in this material world simply result from atomic juxtaposition or combination. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Those who follow the atomic theory think that the protons and electrons of atoms combine in such a way as to bring all material existence into being. However, the scientists fail to discover the cause of atomic existence itself. Under these circumstances, we cannot accept that the atom is the cause of the universe. Such theories are advanced by unintelligent people. According to real intelligence, the real cause of the cosmic manifestation is the Supreme Lord. Janmad Yasha Yataha. He is the original cause of all creation. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 10.8, Aham savasya prabhavo bataha savam pravartate. Krishna is the original cause. Sava karana karanam. He is the cause of all causes. Krishna is the cause of atoms, the material energy. Bhumi apo nalo vayo kammano buddhire vacha ahankara itiyam me bina prakriti astada. Bhagavad Gita 7.4. The ultimate cause is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and only those in ignorance try to find out other causes by posing different theories. So here, Jad Bharat, who was previously Bharat Maharaj, who fell from his path of self-realization and God-realization, fell from the path of spiritual life and become attached, neglected his duties on the spiritual platform by becoming attached to something on the material platform. And in this particular birth, so then he fell down, he became a deer, and then after becoming a deer he became Jad Bharat. So he remembers all of those previous births. So of course what he doesn't want to do, and what he doesn't want anyone else to do, is to attach themselves to something which is illusory, because that's how he fell down. He was attached to the spiritual reality, and then he became attached to something illusory, and that position causes one to be subject to the illusory energy known as Maya and all the dualities therein. So Jad Bharat does not want that others fall into that position. So you see that in the Bhagavad Gita 7:27, that's it. Ichidvesha samutena dvanva mohena bharata sarvabhutini samoham sageyanti parantapa. That, O sign of Bharata, Arjun, O conqueror of the foe. And of course, in this case, Arjun is trying to conquer the illusory energy. Krishna says, all living entities are born into delusion, bewildered by dualities arisen from desire and hate. So Prabhupada mentions the real constitutional position of the living entity is that of subordinate to the Supreme Lord, who is pure knowledge. When one is deluded into separation from this pure knowledge, he becomes controlled by the illusory energy and cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The illusory energy is manifested in the duality of desire and hate. So, our original position is that we are part of the absolute whole or the absolute truth. So our original connection, we're a part of that which actually exists, the reality or the absolute truth. In connection with that reality, we are also in the atmosphere of truth and reality. It's like if we're in a room full of light, then we are in light. We step out of the light, we come into darkness. So that's our original position. Then we separate from that connection. We see no connection between us and the absolute reality. Therefore, we come into delusion. So it's common sense, makes sense. What is it that separates us is that instead of accepting the constitutional situation of our existence and of the absolute truth, we want to change it. That let the reality be something different, where I am literally the centre of everything, the world I create and the desires that I fulfill, that becomes the reality. So that desire and hate, that is the beginning of delusion, and that delusion is a world of duality, which means that everything, you can't touch the truth, you can't connect with the truth because you think something is there, but it's not. So you think that's Maya means that which is not. You think, oh, here is happiness, oh, but I'm finding pain. Oh, here is pain, but there's pleasure. Here is victory, but there is defeat. Here is, I see myself as a man in this world, meditating upon the opposite sex. Next thing, I've taken birth as a female. So nothing exists permanently, no truth exists permanently on the platform of duality. That's the point. That on the platform of reality, a truth exists permanently. But in this world, it's duality, which means every time you think something is real or exists, it just doesn't exist. It's something else. I thought it was this, but it's something completely different. And then I thought maybe that is it. No, that's changed. So the very nature of our existence is like that in this material world we cannot find that which is reality. Everything we think is something then appears to is something else. Like that. And that is the beginning of that being situated in that situation, is because we disconnect ourselves from the platform of the Absolute Truth. The essential envy is that we should be the Absolute Truth. Reality should resolve, as they say, the universe revolves around us. So that is the absolute platform. That everyone else should fit into my reality. My absolute reality becomes everyone should. You see that when you get out in the road in the car, that I'm driving, everyone else should drive to accommodate me in my car. So, now, therefore, the question is, what is reality and what is not? Now, Srila Prabhupada states very clearly here in the purport that the Absolute Truth is Lord Sri Krishna. Krishna himself states that the Absolute Truth is himself. All the Acharyas state that the Absolute Truth is Krishna. All the Vedas state that the Absolute Truth is Krishna. And yet, we cannot accommodate that. Therefore, you see in the same 7th chapter, there's this nice verse by Ramanuja in verse 24. He says, "My dear Lord, devotees like Vyasadeva and Narada know you to be the personality of Godhead. By understanding different Vedic literatures, one can come to know your characteristics, your form and your activities, and can thus understand that you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But those who are in the modes of passion and ignorance, so there's that desire and hate, the demons and non-devotees cannot understand you. They are unable to understand you, however expert such non-devotees may be in discussing Vedanta and the Upanishads and other Vedic literatures. It is not possible for them to understand the personality of Godhead." So once we're in the position of illusion, disconnected from the truth, from the Absolute Truth, then it's not possible to understand the Absolute Truth. We can't have it both ways. Yes, I'm in delusion, disconnected from the Absolute Truth, and I will also be connected. We're either connected or we're not. We're in the sun or we're not in the sun. We're in darkness, like that, or we're not. So, even if they study the Vedas, even if there's also a nice prayer by Brahma in that chapter. Can I find it? So Brahma also says in the Bhagavad Gita, in the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, in the 10th canto, chapter 14, that one may speculate for millions and millions of years, study the different Vedic scriptures, and also one may also study, all the different atoms within the universe and all of those different things, but one still cannot understand the Absolute Truth. So here we see that Jad Bharat is pointing out that foolish philosophers who are in delusion, they're in the modes of passion and ignorance, sometimes even in sattva, but still tinged by passion and ignorance, they present different theories. So previously we're hearing that basically from earth, so many different transformations comes. So you ask the question, is this a pot, a clay pot, or is it earth? Here we get the next level of understanding. Is everything created by the earth, or no, it's actually created by atoms? Because in fact, what is the earth? It's not really earth. It's actually a combination of atoms. So therefore, let us not say that all the varieties in this world are coming from earth, because earth has another cause. So the cause must be atoms. So we've come back to a further cause at that. But what we see with atoms, as Prabhupada points out, that in the purport, it cannot be the cause either, because he says, they do not explain how the atoms are made, but also atoms themselves are not permanently existing. So, for instance, as mentioned, Prabhupada mentions this verse, Bhagavad Gita 7.4, earth, water, fire, air, ether, these are my different separated material energies. So, from ether or space, we get air. Gradually there's a manifestation of subtle. So space, of course, is a combination of atoms within space, very, very thinly spread out. From space, as the atoms change, you can get air and atmospheric conditions, oxygen, different carbon monoxide, so many different things. From air, we can get fire, which is again sometimes you see within the clouds. There is also electricity, so the combination of atoms then can produce, when they become more condensed, they can produce friction, which can produce fire. Fire produces water, so then the atomic combination again changes, and from earth, as the atomic combination changes again, you get, from water you get earth. So basically, if you look at what is earth today, as it decomposes, enters into our atmosphere and again becomes air, and gradually water, and gradually earth again. So therefore you say, the original cause is atoms. But atoms themselves are not in a permanent, they are not in a permanent state. And also we see that atoms are made up of protons and neutrons. So those different atoms, as the protons and neutrons connect to other atoms, and sometimes you lose a proton or gain an electron or something, it actually changes. It becomes something else, a different molecule, a different type of atom. So these and that atomic energy, if you look at atoms, if you look smaller in atoms, you see that what is a proton is some energy, a little bundle of energy, they call it. And the protons, a little bundle of energy. So when you get down to it, oh, these atoms, actually there's another cause, and that is the energy which underlies the various atoms, and that energy is actually the cause of the atoms, because that energy transforms into a variety of different atoms and molecules and so many things. So you go down to the atomic level, and then you just see, well, there's nothing but energy. That one energy is the cause of a variety of different atoms. And so, therefore we see that we can't take atoms as the cause, because there's a cause before that which is just energy, but not in the atomic form. That energy and the nature of energy is that it's always conserved. So that energy in the original state, which produces the material, atoms, etc., that is always conserved. So, and that energy is described in the Bhagavad Gita, is the shadow potency of the actual reality or the spiritual energy. So, because the material energy is produced from spirit, not that spirit is produced from matter. So in all circumstances, therefore we see that spirit is the cause of material energy. So therefore you get the shadow energy, the material energy, we say, well, that can't be the cause, because unless spirit is there, material energy is not produced. So then we get down to the actual cause is Brahman or spirit. So now, therefore, Prabhupada quotes this verse, Bhagavad Gita 7.4, but before I go to that, there's this nice verse in the, again, second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, that 16, Na sato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate sata, ubayarapi drishto nistas tunais tatva darishibir. Those who are seers of the truth have concluded that of the non-existent, the material body, there is no endurance, and of the eternal, the soul, there is no change. This they have concluded by studying the nature of both. So here, if we look at the material energy and we look at the spiritual energy, we see that the constant factor, the actual, that which exists is the spiritual energy, and that the material energy exists relative to the existence of the spiritual energy. So, like a person in a dream. A person in a dream, they dream of, being a king on a mountain. Those things don't actually exist. One is just dreaming. What exists is the person lying in his bed sleeping. So one thing exists, and the other thing exists in illusion relative to that which actually exists. So without the man lying in his bed dreaming, there would be no dream. That illusory situation will not be there. So it exists in relationship to something. There must be a man lying in his bed, or a woman. Equal rights. Laying in his bed, dreaming, and therefore the illusion can exist, resting upon that which is relative, rests upon that which actually exists. So spirit is that which actually exists. How do we know spirit actually exists? Because it is permanent. Something cannot be said to exist if it appears and disappears, then that's illusory. So all the great philosophers and scriptures describe that which actually exists must exist always, past, present and future. If it exists in past, present and future, then it actually exists. It never disappears. It was never created by something else and never disappears due to some other reason. It just always exists. The only thing that has that quality is spirit. There is nothing within material creation that has that qualities. Everything with material creation, right down to the atoms, actually is impermanent. And even if we get down to the material energy, the material energy exists, it's illusory. The material energy is a covering of, say, illusion, which can cover the spirit soul's understanding of that which is truth or reality. And that, as described in the scriptures, that material energy also eternally exists, but relative to the spirit soul. So the material energy exists relative to the spirit soul, and it is one of the and it rests upon Brahman like a cloud rests in the sky. So this so therefore we come to the point of understanding here. So here in this purport, Srila Prabhupada, very kindly for us, he just presents that from atoms we shouldn't accept, the atomic theory or any other previous theories. What we should accept is Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So I'm just trying to bridge that gap, that jump, like that. It appears that if we just presented that to the average audience, they say, well, how can you jump from that? I can present so many other theories. How can you just jump to Krishna? So, therefore, what Jad Bharat does, and what we can look at just briefly here, is that we can understand that the cause, that which exists, is the actual cause. So the cause of material existence is that there is something that actually exists eternally, and that is Brahman or spirit. That exists, and therefore that spirit, Brahman, is the source and cause of what we know as a material manifestation. It is not atoms. It is not earth. Now, then we may say, then I am Brahman. That is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, that I am a spirit soul. I can understand that I am conscious, that Brahman spirit is within me. Therefore, I am the absolute truth, and I am the cause of the material manifestation. In one sense, we are. In one sense, in a tiny sense, we are, but not fully. So Prabhupada quotes that verse, 7:4. I'll just read there, and that's verse 7:4. In that purport, Prabhupada says, this material world is a temporary manifestation of one of the energies of the Lord. All the activities of the material world are directed by these three Vishnu expansions of Lord Krishna. These Purusha avatars are incarnations, are called incarnations. Generally, one who does not know the science of God assumes that this material world is for the enjoyment of the living entities, and that the living entities are the Purushas. So there is an atheistic Sankhya philosophy which says that if matter rests upon spirit, and spirit is known as, therefore, the Purush, then literally we, the living entities, the Purushas, are the cause of the material manifestation. So that would be the next incomplete answer as to what is the cause. So our next jump would be, how do we get from there to understanding the Purushas as a logical... So it says, generally one who does not know the science of God Krishna assumes that this material world is for the enjoyment of the living entities, and that the living entities are the Purushas, the causes, controllers and enjoyers of the material world. According to Bhagavad Gita, this atheistic conclusion is false. In the verse under discussion, it is stated that Krishna is the original cause of the material manifestation. Śrīmad Bhāgavatam also confirms this. The ingredients of the material manifestation are separated energies of the Lord. Even the Brahma Jyoti, which is the ultimate goal of the impersonalists, is a spiritual energy manifested in the spiritual sky. There are no spiritual diversities in the Brahma Jyoti as there are in the Vaikuntha Lokas, and the impersonalist accepts this Brahma Jyoti as the ultimate eternal goal. The Paramatma manifestation is also a temporary all-pervasive aspect of Śrīmad Vishnu. The Paramatma manifestation is not eternal in the spiritual world. Therefore, the factual absolute truth is the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. He is a complete energetic person, and he possesses different separated internal energies. So we see that the absolute truth, which is complete knowledge, absolute knowledge, because it's absolute knowledge, it cannot be covered by illusion or ignorance. So the theory that the absolute truth is covered by ignorance is nonsensical. Therefore, only the atomic particle of Brahman can be covered by and controlled by the material energy, the illusory material energy, but the complete absolute truth cannot be covered by illusion because it is eternally eternal reality or eternally true. The absolute truth means that which exists in reality, in truth, eternally. If something exists in reality, in truth, eternally, then there's no ignorance there. As soon as there's ignorance there, then it doesn't exist in truth, in reality, eternally. So the very conception of the absolute truth is that it exists. If it exists, it's reality. If it's reality, it's truth. And it's there eternally. Therefore, there's no ignorance. You can't have it both ways. Huh? But we see that, then I must be, as stated in the scriptures say, the spirit soul, the individual soul, as Krishna says, you, all these kings, everyone here, never was a time you did not exist, nor now in the future. You always exist. And me, Krishna says, me also. He is the absolute truth, uncovered by ignorance, and we are little spirit souls that can be covered, and that is our eternal position. In the Bhagavad Gita, it clearly states, as all the Vedic scriptures state, that we are eternally a part of the whole. Therefore, we can be covered by ignorance, but the absolute truth cannot. Therefore, and that absolute truth is known as Vishnu. The all-knowing, in the scriptures described, the absolute truth has a localized form within the heart, and people all over the world pray to God, and they understand God will hear me, He's in my heart, He's everywhere. The other day, I asked a 9-year-old boy, I said, I've lit the sacred fire and I've done all the mudras and asked the Lord to sit here and face us while we do our worship. And I said to him, so which way is the Lord facing? And he said, every direction. I said, that's right. I said, that's right. He's all pervading. He can sit and face everyone in that fire ceremony. Or we see that, so the Lord, although He's one, absolute truth means one cause, one reality from which everything comes. Although He's one, He's situated in everyone's heart in a Vishnu form, every living entity, and within every atom. The very nature of an atom comes from its essential quality comes from the Paramatma. It is the Lord that gives the quality of everything. So, therefore, Vishnu, there are 3 Vishnus, and they are described extensively in the Vedas as the supersoul of the entire material energy, Mahavishnu, who impregnates the living entities into the into the material energy, and by his glands, the material energy is agitated, and the Mahatattva, with the 16 principal elements of creation, is manifested. Then that same Vishnu appears within each and every universe. Just as this body cannot grow if spirit is not present within the body, the universe cannot expand into the universal cosmic body unless the Supreme Spirit is there within the universe. And he also exists within the heart of every living entity, within every atom, in his 3rd incarnation as Śrīmad Vishnu. Now, what Prabhupada also states in his Bhagavad Gita 7.4 is that the Brahman feature of the Absolute Truth is a partial manifestation of the Absolute Truth, in that the Sat feature can be realized, or the feature of eternal existence can be realized. In the Paramatma feature of Vishnu, we can realize the feature of Sat and Chit, or eternality and knowledge. And but the varieties of enjoyment and spiritual activity are manifested in the Ananda portion, where we realize the Bhagavan feature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the living entity being part and parcel, the eternal servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The energies are always servant of the energetic, and being a servant of that Supreme Personality of Godhead, we enjoy transcendental bliss when the soul is, their senses are active, in connection with the reservoir of all bliss, Lord Sri Krishna, Satchidananda. Therefore, even the Paramatma feature does not exist eternally in the spiritual world. So there's a quotation in the Bhagavad Gita. I was trying to find it last night, I couldn't find it, but it describes there, one of those verses, that when the living entity attains liberation, final liberation, the Supersoul, Vishnu, enters within Brahman, the spiritual sky, and then enters within his original form as a personality of Godhead. So, leaves me with a, I was pondering that so what we can see that Vishnu, literally one Vishnu accompanies us in every species we go into. And that particular Vishnu who accompanies us, although he's one, but he's within our body, his work is finished and we go back to the spiritual world. So where does he go? That's the question. I go back to the spiritual world. Oh, so what have I done with Vishnu? We will see him in his original form as Krishna in the spiritual world, or Narayan, depending where we go. So, so therefore, Vishnu also has a cause, the ultimate cause of all spiritual and material manifestations. Prabhupada quotes that, Aham Sarvasya Prabhupada, I am the cause of everything, all material and spiritual manifestations. Vishnu, Brahman, and the material energy, the living entities, everything is coming from Krishna. And so therefore, the ultimate cause of everything is Lord Sri Krishna. There is no need for Lord Vishnu to be within our, Vishnu within the spiritual world, because we actually interact with him face to face as the personality of Godhead. And therefore, the ultimate platform of reality is the personality of Godhead, who is the cause even of Vishnu and of the living entities, Brahman. The Brahman is literally the spiritual energy emanating from the personality of Godhead. So in this way, we see here that, now, we quoted at the beginning, I'll just quote one more verse. I quoted the verse how we get down into this platform of duality, and so by disconnecting with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Absolute Truth, the Absolute Reality, and as long as we are disconnected with truth and reality, all our theories cannot ascertain the reality and the supreme cause of everything, which is Lord Sri Krishna. And he reserves the right not to be seen by such rascals. But in the Bhagavad Gita 7:28, Krishna says, Yesham tvantagatam papam jananam punyakamanam te dvandva mohani mukta bhajante mam dudharbhata. Persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of the delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. So by engaging in devotional service, in pure devotional service, reconnecting with the Absolute Truth, then that Absolute Truth, Lord Krishna, reveals the Absolute Truth to us, and thus we come back up out of delusion and to the platform of the Absolute Truth. So that devotional process is the only process by which we can actually ascertain the Absolute Truth. Okay, any questions or comments on that? Any questions about atoms? Good. What's that? You've got a question? Yeah.
Thank you for the class, Prabhu. Actually, I have two questions, if you don't mind.
Four questions. Yeah.
Two questions. One is that aspect of existence as the supreme energy. Because you were differentiating the two levels of existence, the supreme, because of his existence it's supreme. For that reason, he is not under the influence of the energy, material energy, and the tiny living entities, they are subject to be submitted under the influence of that energy. I was considering, it's just because of the existence being of supreme, or because he has the attribution of being the controller of that energy that make him not be under the influence, because he also can, if he desires, can be under the influence of the illusory energy called Yoga Maya.
Yeah, that's answered in the. So we look at these verses again, 725, that I am never manifest to the foolish and unintelligent. For them I am covered by my internal potency, and therefore they do not know that I am unborn and infallible. So we see that in this verse Prabhupada quotes Queen Kunti's prayers, 1.8.19, that the Lord is covered by the curtain of Yoga Maya, and thus ordinary people cannot understand him. And also the Ishopanishad Mantra 15 similarly states, O my Lord, you are the maintainer of the entire universe, and devotional service to you is the highest religious principle. Therefore I pray that you will also maintain me. Your transcendental form is covered by the Yoga Maya. The Brahma Jyoti is the covering of the internal potency. May you kindly remove this glowing effulgence that impedes my seeing your Satchidananda Vigraha, your eternal form of bliss and knowledge. So, and then there's one more prayer quoted in the same verse by Brahma. This is from 10.14.7. O Supreme Personality of Godhead, O Super Soul, O Master of all mystery, who can calculate your potency and pastimes in this world? You are always expanding your internal potency, and therefore no one can understand you. Learned scientists and learned scholars can examine the atomic constitution of the material world or even the planets, but still they are unable to calculate your energy and potency, although you are present before them. So basically, the Lord himself, by his own energy, his internal potency of Yoga Maya, he can cover the eyes of the transcendentalists, that they cannot see past the Brahman as the cause of everything, the impersonal Brahman, but also that Yoga Maya has an aspect called Mahamaya, whereas the transformation of Brahman as a material energy also covers the living entity. So in that way, by the Lord's energies, internal or material, all classes of persons from the transcendentalists down to the materialists are controlled by this personality of Godhead to remain in ignorance as long as they do not perform devotional service to the Lord and reconnect in their proper constitutional position. So as long as we're not in our proper constitutional position as serving the Absolute Truth, then we must come under illusion, and the Lord's internal potency performs that activity of keeping the living entities from being able to perceive the Absolute Truth. So we are controlled by the personality of Godhead. Yeah. To remain in that deluded state, even the transcendentalists, as long as there's no devotional service. So
I think that is another part of, it's addressing another thing. But my question was more related in the two differences that you presented in the beginning of the class about the being covered by the illusion. Why the Krishna, being the Supreme, is not under the influence of illusion. You mentioned about his existence as being supreme. Well, just trying to understand that point, because not just existence is enough for him, being the Supreme, to be, to give him that, I would say, to be exempt of the influence of the energy, the illusory energy. It's because he is the controller of that energy. It's not enough to be just eternally existent in a superlative position, because he has the possibility to control, to accept that he can be even under that influence because he is controlling that.
Well, the very nature of the Absolute Truth is that it is the only existence. See? There's no other factor that can... There is not another factor. There's the Absolute Truth, which is the one total whole. The total of everything is the Absolute Truth, manifesting as Krishna. So there's no other something that's going to come along and affect or disturb the Absolute Truth, because the Absolute Truth is the only thing in existence. And everything else is, part of the Absolute Truth, reality. It's not like... in Christianity we have the concept where, Satan is fighting with God, as if there's God and there's some other powerful influences, but that means that they don't understand the concept of God. That God means he is the only thing that exists. There is no other entity fighting with him, trying to cover him, or can cover him. So he exists in fullness eternally. That's what we have concluded, that spirit exists eternally, and therefore its reality and exists. And the spirit, it exists because it eternally exists, it is the complete whole, everything, and always remains the complete full whole. Always complete in full consciousness or knowledge. So that means all past, present and future is always understood, because knowledge is always full and complete. That is the nature of the Absolute Truth. It exists in full consciousness, absolute consciousness, knowing every aspect of itself, conscious of its complete absolute self, eternally. That is the very nature of the Absolute Truth. So the difficulty is when we don't understand God, thinking God is literally some partial creation. The very concept of God is that he's the Absolute Truth. When we think of a person, sometimes we impose our limited concepts of a person on the Absolute Truth. So therefore we have to understand that he's simultaneously person and simultaneously Absolute Truth. Because he is fully conscious, that means he's thinking. If someone is thinking and aware of themselves, it means they're a person. And if that Supreme Person, that Absolute Truth, expands into different features which are non-different from him, so the Absolute Truth is so full that even he can expand himself fully, and he still remains the full Absolute Truth. And he can interact with those expansions eternally. So the Absolute Truth means it is complete, it is everything. There's no incompleteness. And that is its situation eternally. And all, even so complete that, as we say, he can expand into many individual living entities or many personal expansions. And yet, he doesn't become depleted. He can interact with those expansions to expand his unlimited varieties of enjoyment. Ananda. That Ananda is also eternally an aspect of the Absolute Truth. The Absolute Truth is Satchidananda. He's not just conscious, he's enjoying pleasure-seeking and experiences that unlimited pleasure on the spiritual platform. So the concept that there is some other... so for Krishna, the material energy, that's material for us. It's not material for him. See? Just like the sun creates shadows and darkness on the earth and night. But the sun doesn't, because it's creating shadows and darkness on the earth, it does not experience shadows and darkness itself because it's only light.
That is the next question that I was trying to present, if you don't mind. It's based on that aspect of the observer, according his consciousness. You mentioned that the material energy has duality. It's reality, and at the same time it is not. But reality in the sense that because it's Krishna's energy, it's always permanent there. The forms are changing, so that is the changing aspect, it's temporary. But there's of the observer, that aspect that is for my enjoyment, of according my consciousness, how I see that this is not real.
Yes, duality or delusion is for those who lose sight of the absolute truth. If we lose our connection with truth, then we exist in delusion. As soon as we add a touch with reality, it means we're in delusion.
Yeah, that's the point. Yeah, because of consciousness.
That delusion means that we have lost connection with the absolute truth, but the absolute truth never ever, the absolute truth has full consciousness of the absolute truth itself.
So we can say that it's only the observer, the tiny living entity, who is creating or giving the possibility of that duality of the material energy, because for the absolute truth, it's not that.
No, there's no duality, because Krishna himself says, if he was in duality, he wouldn't say, I am the absolute truth, the cause of everything, and he eternally says that. So it's not as if, in 1,000 years he'll write another Bhagavad Gita. He said, I thought it was the absolute truth, but I'm just starting to doubt myself now. He always says, eternally, that's what we say, the teaching of the Gita is eternal. He says in the beginning, I'm teaching you the same thing that I've taught eternally to the living entities, is that I am the absolute truth. I will never forget that. You do, Arjun, or the living entities. Even the liberated persons are dependent upon the absolute truth. They have to keep their connection. Even a liberated person has to keep their connection with the absolute truth to remain liberated. But above the liberated and the fallible is the absolute truth, who never ever falls into delusion. He always sees himself as the only thing that actually exists, incomplete, that is him, Krishna. Therefore there's never any delusion. And that delusion can't come from anything else, because there is nothing else except for the absolute reality. It doesn't exist. That's called Maya. Our relationship with the Supreme Absolute Truth, we are eternally a part, an atomic part, or an atomic spirit soul, a little part of the Lord's spiritual energy. So we have that eternal position. So we may forget that, or we may remember it, but it doesn't change our position. So for instance, if we're sleeping and we're dreaming, oh, I am the king or a queen on top of a mountain, I'm Lord of all, I survey, we may forget that we're actually someone lying in bed. That dream doesn't change the reality that we're just laying in bed. Whether we, the reality doesn't change just because we would like it. Reality exists eternally. And if we like it to change, we can imagine it to be different. That is called Maya. But actually it can never change because it's the reality. And reality exists eternally. Otherwise it's not reality. So we are eternally part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Whether we want to acknowledge it or not, that position will never change. And therefore we see that in this world, every living entity either serves the Lord's material energy or it serves the Lord's spiritual energy, but everyone serves the Lord. There is no exception. There is not one living entity within the whole history of the universe that can say, I am either not serving God in any way, I'm not going to serve the material energy in one of these forms, or I'm not going to serve him on the spiritual platform in the spiritual. That doesn't exist. We serve the Lord either indirectly in illusion, we serve him with our eyes shut. No, I'm not serving him, but we actually are. Serving the sense of the body, which is the material energy, or we serve him under the influence of the spiritual energy. But there is not one living entity existing which is not. In fact, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita it says, even considering all the different expansions of the Lord all the way up to Balaram, everyone, including all the expansions of the Lord, all serve Krishna. There is no one who is the master except Krishna, and everyone else are his servants.
In that sense, we can say that devotion and service is absolute, but in the ideal way, the ideal devotion and service is when it's more in Krishna consciousness.
Devotional service, we can, when we take up devotional service, we can either be fully Krishna conscious or we can be partially Krishna conscious, but either way we're connected with the absolute truth and we'll get the benefit. So just like if someone falls into the ocean and then someone picks them up out of the ocean and puts them on the deck of the boat, and initially they're rolling around on the deck or the sick bay, they're unconscious. They don't even know they've been saved, but they're just as safe as everyone else who's walking around on that boat. And gradually they wake up, oh, what happened? Oh, you fell in the water. That's okay. Oh, look, we've come to land. Even someone takes the devotional service and they don't quite realise they've been connected with the absolute truth, so they will get the benefit. But the thing is, if we come to the point of realising that without doubt, then we won't be again subject to fall down. See, that's what happened to Bharat Maharaj. That we have to be fixed up. One time someone quoted a verse from the Gita, forget which one it was. We're spirit souls. Prabhupada said, oh, you know that one? Oh yes, Prabhupada. Oh, do you know it eternally? So in Bhagavad Gita 15:7, we're all parts and parcels of Krishna. Oh yeah, we can quote that verse. Do you know it eternally? Do we know it eternally? 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for the rest of our life until the last breath we draw, and into our next destination with Krishna. Do we know it that much? That's that Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, anywhere in between there, this is the pastime of Bharat Maharaj, we can, if we don't fix ourselves up without any doubt and hear and remove every trace of doubt. Yes, Krishna is God, logically, reasonably, shastrically, whatever. We have to be fixed up so that in this life we do not have to take another birth and come back because we've slipped away. But otherwise, anyone doing devotional service is already saved. they may realize it to some degree, and some realize it fully. If we realize it fully, therefore, in this verse here, I'll just read you this one last verse again from the 7th chapter, that just to summarize, Krishna says that verse 7:18, all these devotees are undoubtedly magnanimous souls, but he who is situated in knowledge of me I consider to be just like my own self. Being engaged in my devotional service, he is sure to attain me, the highest and most perfect goal. So the devotee in full knowledge is considered to be very dear to the Lord because his only purpose is to serve the Supreme with love and devotion. Such a devotee cannot live a second without contacting or serving the Supreme Lord. So that is the nature of the soul. We cannot go 1 second without being in our constitutional position in contact with the Absolute Truth. And how do we do that? By devotional service. Such a devotee. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is very fond of his devotee and cannot be separated from him. In Śrīmad Bhāgavatam 9.468 he says, the devotees are always in my heart and I am always in the hearts of the devotees. So for those who fix themselves up in transcendental knowledge by hearing and practicing it, they become so dear to the Lord because they're always thinking of him and serving him. And because they're always thinking of him, serving him, they become so dear that he's always thinking of and looking after them. That's his verse. The devotees are always in my heart, and I am also always in the hearts of the devotees. The devotee does not know anything beyond me, and I also cannot forget the devotee. There is a very intimate relationship between me and the pure devotees. Pure devotees in full knowledge are never out of spiritual touch, and therefore they are very much dear to me. So it places one in a very protected position, because you come, to develop that proper level of Krishna consciousness, one becomes very dear to the Lord by that type of devotional service. And Krishna himself, makes sure that devotee is never out of touch with him. So sometimes because of bad habit or what have you, the influence, of the material energy while we're preaching or what have you, Krishna makes sure, no, that devotee is so dear, I will not let him lose sight of me. So we're almost about to slip, Krishna says, no, I'm not going to let you slip. So that Krishna consciousness is very valuable. Yeah. Okay, Hare Krishna, Jai.